This is Prince Hanley coming to you today with 100,000 watts of pure love. The voice to Israel and for Israel. I want to talk to you today about several different things. War with Israel is possible, and we're getting ready to fight. Open doors to 5,000 Palestinian construction workers. Osama Bin Laden's next project, attacking Western Europe. How Iran is helping Hamas in Gaza, and why some observe 2 Passover suppers. And then finally, for your protection, how to protect your home, your family, and your business from terrorists. Let's start with war with Israel is possible, and we're getting ready. That's what Assad said last week. Syrian ruler Bashar Assad made the statement, war with Israel is possible, and we're getting ready. In a speech in Damascus, he made that statement. It has been reported that Damascus has deployed the 10th Armor Corps at the Masana crossing at Mount Hermon, and it links up with the northwestern positions the 14th Division took up last month on the Syrian-Israeli border, which cuts through the Hermon Range. Syrian troops are now strung along a continuous crescent-shaped line from the central Lebanese mountains through Mount Dov on the western slopes of Mount Hermon and up to southeastern Lebanon. This deployment, commanding Syria's Israeli and Lebanese borders, is under the command of the president's brother, Maher Assad. The 10th Armored Corps was moved forward straight after Syria's civil defense exercise, which flopped about 3 hours on Thursday, April 10th. The exercise was ordered without notice by President Assad on the last day of Israel's 5-day homeland defense drill. Israeli officials are saying that Syria's latest military movements are the result of domestic troubles inside Syrian leadership. However, this is not the case. These escalated military threats to Israel from Hezbollah, from Hamas, from Syria are strategically planned, and Israel needs to take action now. The Syrian buildup has accelerated in the last few weeks and can attack Israel quickly. The Israeli Defense Forces are aware of this, and so should you be aware of this. The connection between Syria's 10th and 14th Division should be a signal for Israel. Listen to and study last week's podcast to learn how to take care of Syria. It's very simple. Israel, Yahweh will give you detailed plans if you listen. Israel, you have to start taking care of these fires as they start. What do you think King David would have done? You've got to start being proactive. Stop worrying about whether the UN, the EU, and the US thinks about you. Stop pandering to them. They're not in your shoes. You are God's chosen people, Israel. Start acting like it. And now let's talk about open doors to 5,000 Palestinian construction workers. In a meeting with PA Chairman Mahmoud Abbas, PM Ehud Omer mentioned licensing the entry to Israel of 5,000 Palestinian construction workers. This is in a rough draft before Abbas meets with President Bush on the 23rd of April. Let me say that this entertains the risk of 2 things. Number 1, terrorist infiltration, and number 2, loss of Israeli jobs to Palestinians. And let me also add here, this is worse than a Trojan horse. When will the leadership of Israel decide that to show weakness is one thing, but to show stupidity exacerbates the situation, and especially for a people who are called by the name of God? It's no wonder God's not helping you. You're not flexing your muscles in faith. And now let's talk about Osama Bin Laden's next project, attacking Western Europe. Osama Bin Laden's next project is to prepare for a major terrorist offensive in West Europe. Terrorist forces have been deployed from Iraq and sent to Lebanon for intensive courses. Remember, wherever terrorists organize, and that includes Western Europe, the Jews are their primary objective and not to be considered collateral damage. And now let's talk about how Iran is helping Hamas in Gaza. Senior defense officials have told the Jerusalem Post that Iran has stepped up its efforts to smuggle weapons into the Gaza Strip by using floatable devices that it drops near the waters off the Gaza coast to be picked up by Palestinian fishermen. According to defense officials, Iran is now sending rockets and other advanced weaponry to Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip by sea as well as via tunnels dug under the Philadelphia corridor and connecting the Sinai Peninsula with Rafah. I've warned you over and over, you must attack Iran now, Israel. You must be proactive. Attack Iran now before it's too late. The word of the Lord to you, Israel, is this: attack Iran now before it's too late. And now let's talk about why some observe two Passover suppers. The 14th of Nisan, year 5768, April 19th, 2008, I celebrated Passover with my family. During Seder, I explained to my family why the Passover we celebrate today is not the same as that given to Moses by God in the Torah. Only the Passover in Egypt was observed exactly according to the instructions given in Exodus chapter 12. The blood was usually never again put on the doors of the houses, and instead of being in great haste and ready for travel, the people now observe the feast from sunset to midnight with great leisure, profuse praise, and thanksgiving to God for the miraculous deliverance of our people from slavery in Egypt. After the temple was destroyed in 70 A.D., we notice that very definite practices other than what we read in the Torah center around the Passover feast. The time of its observance was fixed in accordance with the full moon after the first day of spring. This was done so that the people had moonlight to travel by. However, in those days there were no almanacs or calendars giving the exact waxing and waning of the moon. The Sanhedrin, or governing body of the people, had to be guided by the testimony of two witnesses. These men were appointed to go to the highest mountaintop and there scan the sky for the first sign of the new moon. When the first sign appeared, they built bonfires on the top of the mountain. Then the people up and down the land of Judea passed on these signals by building bonfires from mountaintop to mountaintop until all the land was notified that the official witnesses had seen the first sign of the new moon. Every Jew knew that he should count from that time of the bonfire signals a period of 10 days, and on the 10th day he was to select the lamb, and then there were 4 more days to the actual time of killing the lamb. These 4 additional days were ample time for each family to examine the lamb minutely to see if there was any blemish. And if such a blemish should be found, the lamb was to be rejected and another one taken in its place. So it was that the Messiah Yeshua offered himself 4 days before the Passover as the Lamb of God that takes away the sin of the world. It was on Monday, the 10th of Nisan, when Messiah made what is now known as the triumphal entry into Jerusalem by the way of the sheep gate. It was at the very time Jews were selecting the lambs for the coming Passover. Yeshua challenged the scribes and Pharisees, "Which of you convinces me of sin?" You can read that in the Brit Hadashah. There was abundant opportunity to find fault, blemishes, or sin in the Mashiach ben David, in Messiah Yeshua. 4 days. Ample time. However, the final verdict came from the lips of Pilate when he cried out to the crowd, "I find no fault in this man." You can read that in the book of Luke, chapter 23, verse 4, in the Brit Hadashah. Yeshua HaMashiach was the Lamb. Yeshua HaMashiach was the Lamb, without spot and without blemish. In him all the Old Testament types were fulfilled. Another interesting fact is that it was on Thursday at sundown that Yeshua observed the last Passover with his disciples, although the official date was Friday. This may seem a contradiction, but it isn't. There were many devout Jews who were so faithful in their desire to serve God and obey his commandments that they often leaned over backwards, went to extremes to make sure that they did not break one yod of the law. These devout men were fearful lest the witnesses might possibly have made a mistake by one day when they observed the new moon, and so cause the Passover to begin a day overtime. It was therefore the practice, which was legally permitted, that such Jews could properly celebrate the opening night of the Passover one day ahead of the time officially set. However, they were not allowed to eat the Passover lamb until sunset on that next evening, the actual time fixed by the Sanhedrin. To this very day, many Jews observe 2 Passover suppers, or seders. So it was quite proper that Messiah and his disciples partook of the Passover on Thursday evening that week, in that year, but there was no lamb. And how wonderfully divine was this plan! For on the next day, the official day, the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach would offer himself as the spotless lamb, the Paschal lamb, slain from the foundation of the world, once for all time, to make atonement for the sins of the world. Remember that the Torah says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement for the soul." Every year, true Jews who believe in God and other Messianic believers keep this great memorial feast of the Passover, as well as Pesach. The Holy One has blessed me with 7 children and 7 grandchildren, all who know the Lord. One year after Seder, my 7th child, who was 8 years old at the time, asked me if he could take part in mikveh. We filled up the bathtub, and when he came out of the water, he was speaking in another language, the biblical experience of tongues. He received the baptism in the Ruach HaKodesh as described in the Brit Hadashah. His name is Ephraim Avraham Kasher. Now I want to talk to you about how to protect your home, family, and business from terrorists. Speaking of Passover, here's how to protect your home, your family, and your business from terrorist attacks. Apply the blood of Messiah Yeshua in faith over the door, that is, over the top lintel and over the 2 side posts of your home and businesses. Just pray and speak the blood of Messiah over them. Just pray and tell God that he promised that the death angel would pass over when he sees the blood upon your door. This is Prince Handley coming to you with 100,000 watts of pure love. Baruch haba b'shem Adonai.